and welcome to the Scottish Football Show, brought to you by the Rangers Rabble podcast. It's the end of match day 4, so we're going to review the weekend's action, the talking points, and see what we can bring you. I'm joined this week by Connor and Ian. Gents, how we doing?
Aye, all right. Aye. It's been a weekend of entertainment, I would say, in the SPL, actually. I think from what I've seen, there seem to be quite a few decent games in there. So, I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Ian, champion, have you along? Looking forward to it?
Yeah, looking forward to it. My first time on this season, so I'm looking forward to it. It's been a weekend. It's been a day. It's VAR decisions that, quite frankly, astound you. Some refereeing decisions that astound you even more. Some looking at it, I mean, if you were looking at some of the stuff in isolation, there's actually some really good football been played this weekend in those games as well. So, yeah, looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, let's not let the referees get in the way of a good party. That's what I'm going to say. Okie dokie. So, listen, if this is your first time joining us, we don't talk about the Rangers games on here. There's plenty of content, the Rangers matches, elsewhere on the channel. If you're looking for just solely Rangers, then you will find that there. Here, we like to try and get a good overview of what else has been going on in the division. And I think today there's only one really place to start, and that's Tynecastle for me. Hearts really struggling, Connor, with this European domestic. Obviously pumped out of Europe in midweek. And then they welcome in-form Motherwell to Tynecastle. It was always going to be a tricky afternoon for them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I said last week on the pod I fancied Motherwell to win this today. Didn't get the scoreline right, but I've still got a point for the winner, so happy days. No, I just thought they would struggle, coming back for a tough away fixture in Europe, in Greece, the climate out there, obviously, the heat that's going on in Europe right now as well, wouldn't have helped them. And it was a right scalping they got as well. So they were always going to be low in confidence, but to be fair, I thought Motherwell were fantastic. I thought they looked lively and they looked sharp. And they look like a team who are exactly where they are right now, who've had an absolutely wonderful start to the season. I think they're joint top of the league, which is, impressive. I think they were saying as well that they've not lost an away game since February. That's mightily impressive for them. So I thought they thoroughly deserved the win, and I think Hearts, to be honest, should probably be thankful that they are now out of Europe, because judging on the form we've seen so far, if they were in Europe between now and Christmas still, they'd been a relegation battle, the form that they're on, because they've been really, really poor. They had one or two moments in the game. Hearts, a couple of half chances. Shanklin got one. It was through a sea of bodies that was, straight at the goalkeeper. And of course, even when Motherwell went down to 10 men in the game, it didn't look like Hearts really took advantage of that either. So, no, great day at the office for Motherwell, and I think I thoroughly deserve 3 points.
We'll come on to Hearts shortly, but I do want to sort of rejoice in Motherwell's good turning up, or upturn, should I say, in fortunes, as Connor touches on there. 11 on the bounce away from home without defeat. Stuart Kettlewell, he has an identity, he has a style. It might not be everyone's cup of tea, but he certainly has one. And some of the football that was getting played, as he's touched on in the intro, was delightful. I mean, let's talk about Callum Slattery and how pivotal he's been for Motherwell's resurgence.
Yeah, I mean, that boy, he looks a quality player. I mean, they got to what levels, but I mean, for Motherwell, he looks like a proper quality player. The amount of times he was involved in the decent passing movements, the quick 1-2 passing off the ball, the movement was superb. And I'm sure we'll come on to it in a bit when he actually gets the just rewards for his efforts today. But I mean, between him and Spittle, I thought Spittle had a cracking game for Motherwell today. Always been a quality player, likes a goal. Particularly against certain other clubs. Slattery was again, I can't take too much from it from the highlights, but for me, I mean, if he hasn't walked out of that game with their man of the match, then they must have some team this year, because he was decent. He just...
Well, Ian, go on about the goal, because you were going to touch on the goal. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Flagged offside, which was ludicrous.
Oh, he couldn't have been any more onside. He was 2 or 3 yards onside. It was not even like it was close. I mean, when I watched it and it went in, and they said it was stopped. Even in the replay at speed, you could tell he wasn't offside.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the linesman was looking at. I mean, whether the linesman's not quite in line because he's not as quick as the players, and from his angle maybe. But I mean, it's one of the few occasions where you can actually go, well, that's VAR doing its job and doing it right, and that's what it's there for. So it quite rightly gets that goal back from Motherwell, because it would have been a travesty not to have given that goal, because it was absolutely brilliant move, quick move in outside the box. I think Neil McCann put it on Sportsy and said it was a 1-2 and then a 3-4. That's how good the passive movement was. They just cut Hearts apart and then in the box, and a very composed finish against a good quality goalkeeper in Clark. I mean, he does pull off some decent saves even through this game. So, I mean, to get
he thwarted Slattery a couple of times prior to the goal, and then moments after the goal, Slattery sees him off his line, pings one Beckham-esque from inside his own half, and Clark's sort of backpedaling, but he doesn't sort of trouble him in the after all. Hearts, though, Connor, it is worrying times, isn't it? I thought Tynecastle was very flat today, and then you see at full time the boos ringing round, but Stevie Naismith comes out afterwards, and it's the same old story.
It is the same old story for Hearts. I think, to me, this is the sort of thing that happens when you put somebody like Stevie Naismith in charge. Really, they got a good bounce out, when he took over for Robbie Neilson last season, and they made a right good, fist of it trying to get back into third with Aberdeen. However, they failed in that, of course. And this season, they just kind of, it's been very stale. It didn't look, they showed the clips, fans were leaving the ground early, and to be fair, given that there was a few minutes left of the highlights as well, it looked fairly early. They must have left. So that's never a good sign. I think they're a team in desperate need of this international break, actually. I think they need the next couple of weeks to go away, rest up a bit, get them on the training ground as well, and try and get their sharpness up and dust themselves down, because it's been a right tough month for them. And if they're going to be anywhere near considering getting third again, they're going to have to up it pronto. My only concern for them is I'm not convinced that Stevie Naismith is the right man for that job. He looks totally out of his depth for me. I think if he'd come in his first managerial gig in League One, the Championship, fine. You see that happen all the time. Kevin Thompson, Barry Ferguson in the past have done that sort of thing. He's not up to the quality that you would expect. And particularly, whether people, love him or loathe him, he did have big shoes to fill with the job that Robbie Neilson done there. And he's just not ticking those boxes right now. And his post-matches they're flat. There's no substance behind these post-matches. It's the same stuff you'd expect him to say when you listen to him, and you're unlucky, or it's this or it's that. And you go, no, you can use the European thing as, it's an issue, but actually Hearts have a bit of experience in it. And a lot of those players had a Conference League campaign last season. So it shouldn't have been a total culture shock to most of them to have to play Thursday, Sunday the last month or so. So it's, I think, not good enough across the board.
No, and as you say, Stevie Naismith seems to come out and doesn't defend the players. He goes for the jugular most times. Rumours are as well, some Hearts fans stayed to the end so they could avoid the traffic. Make of that what you will. Ian, I will say as well, you look at some of the defending towards the end, Dan Casey, who was exceptional last weekend as well, Bevis Mugabe, they're celebrating blocks like they've just scored a goal. There's a real togetherness in this Motherwell squad and a real sort of commitment to getting bodies on the line.
Yeah, I mean, people slate defenders when they do that, but I don't. If the defender's job is to defend, and if they feel that it's worth celebrating, let them go. To them, it's like scoring a goal for them tackling like that. I mean, that Dean Casey one, all ends in. That's going in the corner. And he just flings himself at it over the bar. And then not long after, well, I say not long after, I don't know if it was, but it was in the highlights, Mugabe does exactly the same thing. And both the two, I mean, Boyce and Shankland, on a normal day, that arrows into any corner. That's how good those two can be for Hearts. But like you say, with the European run that they've had, and the heat and the travelling, it's not clicking for him at the moment. I think Connor's right that the international break has come at a good time for him. I don't think it's come at a good time for Motherwell. And if you're Motherwell, you don't want to stop playing. You want to keep going. So we'll have to see what effect that has on the teams returning when they come back. But I mean, they're defending right to the very end. And I mean, right to the very end. Even the corner at the end, I think Motherwell player takes a foot to the face with the last action of the game just to make sure that Hearts aren't going to get in. So, you know, can't knock them for that. Some superb defending and an all-round great team performance from Motherwell today.
And amazing stat as well. I think 95 yellow cards in the Scottish Premiership so far this season. The first red today for a double yellow for Paul McGinn. Any real complaints there, guys?
No.
Nah, not really for me. I think his first one's a certain book, and the second one, in some ways, you can feel a bit of sympathy for him in the respect that some referees might not have given him the second booking for that. They might have just had a word in his ears, because at first it looked like, you know, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But when you do see it back, I mean, McGinn initiates the first contact, and then Boyce is actually obviously quite smart. And at the end, it was almost a spear for McGinn. So I think at that point he couldn't have had many complaints. I did laugh though when I seen him. It showed to be highlighted when he went over to the fourth official, you know, hunting for the VR and all that. And then you're thinking, you don't get that for a second booking, mate. But to be fair, you know, again, to Motherwell's credit, they stood firm even with 10 men, and they got it over the line, because to be fair, if Hearts had managed to nick that there, it'd have been a smashing grab.
I think as well, you know, you've got to say, as we head into the international break, no one would have thought it would have been Motherwell at the top end of that division. They certainly would have thought it would have been Hearts, and that's both Edinburgh clubs now sort of sunk in the bottom six. We'll come on to the second of the Capitals teams momentarily, but yeah, Hearts in real bother and Motherwell flying. Okay then, yeah, up to Pittodrie we'll go, because I thought this one was quite a sort of a mouth-watering tie on paper, but in evidence, both teams really out of form. Ian, managerless Hibs, obviously Lee Johnson sacked, David Gray in caretaker charge. Aberdeen put out of Europe to add to the list. They obviously had the consolation of going into the Conference League, but still, struggling domestically as well.
Again, I think they're having the issue of playing 2 games in a week constantly. I think like Hearts, they've struggled. They looked flat today. They didn't really get into it. A couple of chances here and there, but going into it, neither of these two teams have won a league game so far this season. So you could have probably edged your bets for a draw on this one just because of that stat alone. But someone had to give, and today it did. I think Hibs looked pretty decent from the get-go. I mean, a couple of decent chances for Aberdeen, but I don't think there's any argument over who won this game, and the scoreline reflects it. Hibs were actually quite good today. A lot of play goes through Boyle. Boyle's the man they look for. He bought a free kick early on when Fish jumped up to... no, Fish. He played it into Fish. Sorry, I'm getting the wrong person. It was the McGarry who sort of come into his back. Boyle buys it a little bit, but you expect that from Boyle. Is a free kick. He plays the ball into Fish, who does leap at the back post. I was going to put a joke in there, but Martin did enough of them earlier on today. He gets his head on it, but it does go over the bar, and that was kind of the intention from Hibs early on that was shown then from that point onwards.
Connor, we spoke last week with Lewis about, you know, Hibs maybe over-reliance on the likes of Boyle and Johan, and we saw sort of the good and the bad early Johan, I felt, in that first half in terms of getting himself into good positions, but just his decision-making and you know, with that final ball is lacking.
Yeah, it definitely is lacking. You've seen one of the instances where that burst of pace that he does have on him was really telling. He plays a ball for himself, basically, and he manages to beat the defender to it. You're just looking for a bit more composure in the final third in that scenario, because he's got a couple of options available to him there. For me, he can either, you know, try and lift it over the keeper because he's too close to him to try and play it to the far corner by the time he gets on it. And to be fair, to give Keller Roos a bit of credit, that's good goalkeeping to close that angle off. So you could try and go over him, or I think the preferred option, square it across. And I think was it Doige, I think, or whatever it was in there, could have had a tap in. So he's still got that to work on, but I do think they've got the makings of a cracking player. And I think overall, I mean, Hibs, it's a win that they needed. I think, I agree with what Ian said. I thought it would have been a draw today, personally, because it just had the makings of it, with the two teams coming in it off the back of midweek exertions. But credit to Hibs for getting the win. Although I do think Aberdeen should have had a penalty kick.
Right, okay. Well, go on then. I'll let you go with that.
Well, for me, when Duke's running into the box with Lee Miller, throughout that whole time, he's got his arms all over Duke. He's flapping away. Yes, when he goes in the box, the arms stop a little bit, but you can see, for me, it looks like he's put Duke off balance with the arm movements going on behind him, and then it looks like he's just caught him on the back of the calf. I think it's a slight nick, and ordinarily I'd maybe say it's too soft, but I think given the fact he was all over him before that as well, I think he's got a little bit lucky there. I can see why VAR overturned it, but if I was an Aberdeen fan, not so sure I'd be thrilled that decision went against me. Because I think for me it should have been a penalty. Because I think if it was outside the box, the free kick gets given, and Miller probably gets booked because he was all over him. I think the fact it was in the box and then Duke goes down and it's how much contact between the legs, that's what VR have obviously looked at and determined it wasn't. But no, I think it was a stonewall penalty, to be honest with you.
Ian, do you share that? Because I've got to say, I'm in the camp that he took a dive.
And I'm with you. I don't think it was a penalty. I think he was. I was hoping you would come to me first, then I'd put you on the spot. But then again, it doesn't matter if that's your view. His arms were all over him, but there's nothing unorthodox with what was going on with that. You see that hundreds of times over any game in any league around the world. He gets into the box, his foot's there. I think Duck sees it and tries to buy a penalty, because if you look at it, he pulls his foot away, he doesn't touch him, and I mean, even if it was a minimal contact, Duke doesn't help himself by the way he throws himself to the floor. He over-exaggerates it, which might possibly lead to VAR looking at it and going, yeah, not for me. But no, I didn't think it was a penalty, even in real time. And I'm not entirely sure anybody knew what the referee had done, because I'm pretty sure he gave a cold kick, but commentary was saying that he gave a penalty. So,
yeah, I'm going to stay with you then. The deadlock gets broken. Hibs makes some subs. Christian Doige doesn't give up on that ball. Chases it down. Manages to get it into Newell. It's a lovely layoff, and the finish from Lafondra is literally sublime. Rolling back the years, he did not look like a 37, 38-year-old there. Hits it with great force and accuracy, nestles it in the far corner.
Yeah, good flick on by Johan to start it. I mean, like you said, Doige doesn't give up. A lot of people probably would have. Give it an effort to run at it and then slowed down looking at it going over the line, but Doige didn't, gets it back in, cuts it back. I mean, that finish from Lafondra. He's rolling back the years, like you said, but we had back along, we had Defoe, who was pretty much, when it comes to football in terms of pensionable age, you just don't lose it. You know where the goal is if you're at a certain level, and Lafondra is at a certain level. He's got his moments and is a quality finish by a quality player.
And then, Craig, they go and they cement the 3 points. David Gray delighted, obviously.
Did you just say Craig?
Sorry, Connor.
I was like, Craig? He's going, isn't he?
So they sort of Newell off the bar, and Doige doing what he, which is his bread and butter, sort of winning sort of an ideal duel in the box.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing. He's a player who last year, obviously fell out of favour, went to Kilmarnock and stuff. But what, for me, he's good in those areas. Aberdeen, I must say, defensively, it's poor. It's, they've allowed a game of head tennis to take place in their own box. Because it's literally, I think, it's headed initially for Newell onto the bar, comes back off the bar. I think the Aberdeen defender then tries to clear it, doesn't quite clear it. Then it gets headed on, I think, twice by Hibs players, and then Doige with the final header into the back of the net. It was quite a scrappy old goal. But, in the end up probably no more than Hibs ultimately deserved out of the game. And he clearly deserves a goal because he's been causing menace. I mean, having seen the last couple of weeks when they've been playing, the one thing I would say about Doige is he's looked a threat for them, at least, even when they've not had it going their way and they've been maybe relying a bit too much on Martin Boyle. He's at least looked like he could cause some problems, and today he did. So I think it's a messy goal for Aberdeen to concede, but I think it's a really good goal for Hibs. And what it is as well for, I think, anybody watching football, it's a good advert for how you keep the ball alive when it's come back in. You win that first phase of play, even if you don't win the second, you get the third, and then eventually, the chance will fall. So they've done that really, really well.
And Doige as well, farmed out to Kilmarnock last season. He's come back in and he's really sort of grabbed his chance with both hands. Whenever he gets on, you really see him putting in a shift. I'll just finish on you on this one, just in the sense that, Hibs, if they're going to win games and get momentum, is it a case then for David Gray to throw his hat into the ring? We saw it with Kettlewell last season when Hamill went. He came in on a caretaker basis, got a few results, and obviously the rest is history. Is it something that David Gray might be interested in, or do you think Hibs are going to spend the next 2 weeks sort of prodding and probing with the likes of Stephen Robinson, etc.?
I think at the moment, they'll be really lucky to even get Stephen Robinson to come and talk to them. He's doing such a good job at St Mirren. Why would he want to go? You could argue that Hibs are a bigger club, but he's doing great things at St Mirren. So I think they'd be very lucky to get him. I think Gray should chuck his name in. I mean, was he not caretaker before they got Lee Robinson in as well? I can't remember.
He was. Yeah,
everyone's getting pulled up in wrong names tonight. I'm having you.
I could know him as well because he used to manage Bristol City when I lived down there, so I should know him.
So he has had a caretaker role before. I couldn't pin it down if it was with Lee Johnson, but certainly you maybe think that they won't go with him, Connor, and they'll just run with a bigger name.
Yeah, I think so. I think David Gray's a solid coach. Clearly, he's been there through a number of managers. To be fair, he's been there for years. Like, even since he retired as captain, he's stayed about as a coach under Jack Ross, under Neil Lennon, under Johnson. He's had some interim spells. And he's not done too bad in them, but I'm not seen enough to think that you'd stick with him. I think Hibs have ambitions beyond what I think he would be able to deliver them just at this moment in time.
Okay. Well, a nice little sort of caveat there from Ian mentioning Stephen Robinson, because we're going to go to Almond Vale, Livy v St Mirren. I think, I say a shock, but no, I called it. I called a Martindale masterclass, maybe not a draw, but certainly I thought they would do okay. Connor, we'll come to you. And then Livingston on that pitch, I know it gets mentioned a lot, but I think there's a lot to be said for Davy Martindale's resilience in this division. He's often tipped to get down. We mentioned it last week. They're not going anywhere, are they?
No, sadly. I've tipped them to get down. I've been in that camp so many times, and they keep proving everybody wrong. And I think yet they'll be disappointed, I think, at the fact that they scored with a minute to go in normal time, and they end up, I think, losing a bit of concentration in their final third, and it, costing them an equaliser that St Mirren probably didn't really deserve. So, yeah, but to be fair, they just seem to pull results all the time. You see a game like that and you think, well, okay, that pitch can be a leveller, but St Mirren are flying, they're going there, having won, 6 of the last 7 games. We just that draw in the last game. You think, they'll fancy this even on that surface, and Livy put up a right good go again as they usually do. And I think what he does really well for me, David Martindale, other than the pitch, which we know can be the great leveller, he sets his team up very well defensively and makes them so difficult to break down, and he uses the fact that not only is it an AstroTurf pitch, it's quite a small pitch, so he uses every blade of that turf, and it was said grass there, but that'd have been factually incorrect. He uses every blade of that turf that he can to get his players into positions, and he says, if you're going to take something for us, you're going to earn it, you go and work to get your goal. Exception being a slight mistake for St Mirren's goal, but in general terms, I can be nothing but impressed what Martindale's been delivering there for the last couple of years, really.
Ian, he does. Ian's gone. Well,
He's gone.
Couldn't have timed that any better, could you? Didn't want to talk about St Mirren. So no, I'll come back to you then, Connor. As you say, Livingston they make St Mirren pump balls into the box, which they're happy to gobble up, aren't they? With the big boys at the back. So I thought Bacchus was unlucky. Nice little move, and then he sort of gets it wide. And Kelty a similar chance as well, but that was all they really had first half.
It was, yeah. I think again, limiting them to is little to nothing, and it's for St Mirren. Look, of course they should be doing better in those areas. They should be creating more. Because you don't want to fall into the trap. And look how many times we've seen Rangers do it. We've seen Celtic do it. We've seen everybody who goes there. You fall into that trap where you do start trying to play the long balls into the box or the crosses, and that's their bread and butter. They will do that all day long, twice on Sundays. They don't have a problem with it.
Well, they did do it twice on Sunday. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they just clearly St Mirren fell into that trap the day. I thought as well, they had a very tight offside call as well, Livingston, when they got in and Bruce Anderson had his goal off. That was the correct decision. However, for me, it was a warning shot for St Mirren that I don't think they heeded, clearly. But in fact, they conceded after it. So, no, a tough day for them. But I think they'll probably be happy to get up the road with a point, really, St Mirren.
Strange that one as well, that the offside you speak of, because Bruce Anderson just wasn't convinced, was he? He was sort of, he didn't want to say, he was saying to the boys, don't celebrate just shit, because I'm not quite sure, kind of thing, which you don't see very often.
No, he wasn't convinced. And even Martindale on the touchline, you kind of seen him going, no so sure. That's how tight it was, though. And actually, when you've seen the analysis of it, it's just lucky Ficharro's done, because he has actually took a gamble by stepping up the way he did, because if he's a fraction of a second slower in stepping up, then Bruce Anderson's onside and that goal counts. So, it's one of those ones that you're just a wee bit unlucky when they go against you, because it's fine margins.
Ian, we glad to have you back. We spoke before about Christian Doidge and keeping the ball alive. Sangari does the same. Ball's played in quite deep. Sangari manages to keep it going. It gets it right across the face of goal, and DeLucas is there to tap it in. And you think Livy have got the 3 points at that stage?
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did. 89th minute. So the thought that was going through my head is there's nothing better than a last-minute winner. So it was a good movement, or a decent movement. Gets the ball in. He reacts quickest, puts the ball in, and you got to admit that Livingston probably at that point think they've done it. Just hold out for a couple of minutes, 6 minutes in this case, and it should be home and hose, 3 points. Everyone goes home happy. The 27 Livingston supporters that were in the ground, and the hundreds or so of St Mirren fans go home on a bus. It's a long trip back from Livingston, but not to be, as we've already alluded to.
Yeah, rumour has it that BK Hacken took more away fans to Aberdeen than Livingston had home fans today. So,
wow. Just on that late equaliser, Connor, Stevie Robinson sort of saying in his post-match that St Mirren didn't deserve to win the match, and you got the sort of vibe that Martindale kind of felt pickpocketed at the end.
Yeah, he would do. I mean, Ian's right. There's nothing better than a last-minute winner, except a last-minute equaliser. When you think you've just lost it and then you somehow claw a point. So, I mean, it was daylight robbery, really. But at the same time, I think if I'm Martindale, yep, I'm feeling like I've had my pocket picked. But I'm also asking my defenders that wee question, going, listen, you've got to stay switched on until that whistle goes. I get it. Sometimes you have that emotive, we've got that last minute goal in the 89th minute and you think you've won it. Sometimes you get caught up in that a bit too much, and you do you see it so many times, just a slight switch off because you forget, especially in this day and age, just because you scored in the 89th minute, there could be 10, 12 minutes added on, you don't know. In that case, I think it was 6, but it's a blow for Martindale. Equally, as I say, Robinson will be happy to go up the road with a point, and who knows, that could very well be Stevie Robinson's final St Mirren game, because he may well be. I think he should be one of the candidates for the Hibernian job, so that'll be interesting to see how that unfolds over the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. Okay, I mean, as I say, just to sort of finish up on that one, I think Livingston will be happy when David Martindale sits back to watch Scotland on Friday night. With his work in the early weeks, because I think a lot of us tipped them to go down this year. So okay, then up to Perth for the Tayside derby. This one had the makings of probably a 0-0 written all over it. However, it did not disappoint. Scott Tiffany seems to be starting now for Tommy Docherty, and seems to be a bit of a live wire early doors, adding into the mix of the new frontman Bakayoko as well.
Yeah, still a name that drives me to fear, Bakayoko, but well, enough of that. That was we've covered all that. I mean, I wasn't expecting too much from this game, to be perfectly honest. Watching Sky Sports on Saturday, all the games in Scotland just looked destined to finish 0-0 at one point. This game, I think, would have been top of my list for a 0-0. Neither team really setting their heather alight go forward. St Johnstone in particular. I know they had a good result, and you can't take that away from them from last week. And to go down 2-0, I didn't think there was any way back for them. But there's something inside there that team's beginning to come together, maybe, and they're starting to fight for each other a little bit. And done well to get themselves back into it, and the limbs in the St Johnstone end. Again, I still think that there wasn't that many fans there. If you look at the pan of the ground, that stand behind the goal was practically empty. But the great comeback, and when you're not watching it and you're in neutral, it's always brilliant to see a team who are 2-0 down and look dead come back to 2 each. It's a fantastic thing to watch. So fair play St Johnstone. Dundee, not one of my favourite teams, but they did play good football. They did score 2 decent goals, but as a neutral, it was brilliant to see a 2 each from a 2-0. That was brilliant.
Connor, let's just go through that. Actually, Ian touches on obviously the comeback, but Dundee obviously go ahead. Tiffany gets on the end of that Bakayoko one, and he'll be claiming that all day long. Lammy then from the corner in the second half. On his debut, he should have been there last year apparently. Stayed at Motherwell maybe a season extra, and he makes it 2. Tiffany then should make it 3 with a header and make it game over. St John's at that point were all over the place defensively, letting Dundee in left, right, and centre. But I just felt Chris Kane seemed to turn St Johnson's fortunes around when he came on. Offered something else up front, starts getting himself and making a nuisance of himself. I think he hit the bar, and then all of a sudden Graham Carey crosses and Kucheravi, I hope I've done that boy's name justice there. he makes it 2-1, and you're thinking it's maybe a consolation. Again, Carey linking up with Kane. Kane gets a header. He was offering the most of any of the Johnson boys and really sort of dragging them. And then right at the death, the drill cross, and Kucheravi can't miss, and it's pandemonium with Perth.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, if David Martindale thought he'd had his pocket picked, Tony Docherty must think he's had his broke into somebody's 90s telly. That's honestly, I mean, how with 8 minutes to go, you're 2-0 up. The chances they had as well, you touched on. There was the one where the St Johnstone keeper makes an absolute mess of it, trying to play it for the back. Tiffany gets in 1-on-1. Got to score. You just got to score. And it's what can happen to you when you don't take your chances. You get punished. And they did. I thought St Johnstone, there's just something about St Johnstone where they're not playing particularly great, but they do seem to have a bit of steeliness about them in terms of they not giving up the ghost, because it'd be very easy at that point when you've only got a few minutes left in the game, you're 2-down just to kind of go, you know what, now we've had a goal, but it's not been our day today. And they didn't do that. I thought Kane did. did swing it. I think he's an important player for them. If he can stay fit for the season, he's one of their more experienced heads, and that's something they've lacked, I think, particularly in their cup campaign and their early start to the season. But I think Stephen McLean will be delighted, because I think the draw last week at Parkhead, and then obviously to come back this week, it shows a bit of fighting spirit in them, and maybe rumours of their demise have been slightly over exaggerated. I still think they'll struggle because they need more goals in their team. That's really their point. But their man there, big Max, because I'm not saying his second name. He's he could be a vital part of that puzzle for them. And I think at the end of the day, I don't think Dundee can have many complaints when you don't take your chances and St Johnstone getting back into it. So yeah, I mean, you thought it'd be a 0-0 draw. Shows how wrong you were, because it was a goal fest in the end.
Ian, just on that, obviously St Johnstone last weekend go to Celtic Park and were on a hiding to nothing, come away with a 0-0 draw. Had a couple of chances maybe to take all 3 points. Today a different story. They go behind. They have to show character. Stephen McLean probably deserves some credit for these changes.
Yeah, I mean, we all ordered it last week because it's not an easy place to go, no matter how bad Celtic are supposedly playing or how many players they're missing. I mean, like Rangers, if you're playing against St Johnstone at home, you're expected to win no matter who you put out, because your team should be better than them. So they lauded that for getting a 0-0 there. His changes obviously changed the game today, and he manages to get from what looked like a surefire defeat to another point. I mean, that'll feel like a win to St Johnstone, because I'm sure even their players are like going, "Oh, we'll give it a go. We'll try and get back into it. If we're lucky, we'll nick one, and then we'll see." Just to get it back to 2 each. I mean, they'll feel elated tonight. And so Stephen McLean, it's just been a struggle. I mean, his League Cup campaign was awful. Going out before the group stage is not good. Not a good look for any Premier League manager. They struggled at the start of the season, but maybe just some green shoots for them. They can build off it. And again, another team that will be really happy that the international break has just come around, because it gives them a chance to get working and hopefully improve coming back into the next league game in a couple of weeks.
Okay. We will finish up at Rugby Park. We'll get on to what I've seen as one of the most bizarre refereeing moments I've seen in Scotland for quite some time. But going into this one, Connor, a lot of people thought Derek McInnes would get back on the horse, and this would be a routine victory as such. But it didn't pan out that way, did it?
It certainly did not, no. Kilmarnock at home, we know that the problem they had last season was their away form. This season, that seems to have continued, having lost at Motherwell last week in what was their first away game of the season. So you'd think, well, the home form, that's got to be what they'll rely on. They've got that pitch, they've started well, they've got results against Rangers and Celtic. And compare that with County, who have been playing good football, to be fair to them. I don't think they've been particularly, blown away in any games. I think they've held their own fairly well at times, but you just expected that Kilmarnock would get the job done, and they didn't. And look, I mean, it's one of those kind of things where I think that shows the difference. See, when you're playing Rangers and Celtic and you're at Rugby Park, in some ways it's almost easier because you're not expected to come out and control the game or attack or do much of that. You're expected to sit back, make it tough, and then hit a counter-attack. Whereas when you're playing County and you're Kilmarnock, you're the favourites to win that game. So you're expected to control it and dictate it. And I don't think they've done that well enough. And County, I thought, ultimately were probably the better team. I know, obviously, we have the most bizarre moment I think you'll ever see.
Let's pause that a minute, because I want to talk about the first
of course, if
we can. Connor, I'll stay with you for that initially. Just the Finlay through Murray penalty, yes, no for you. What did you think?
It's funny because in real time, I thought yes. I thought, yeah, penalty. But when I did see it back, VR had a look. It does look like he gets the ball. I don't know. There wasn't an angle that showed me whether there was contact with Simon Murray or not, or how much it was. I mean, Murray is, for all he's a big lad who throws himself about there, he can go down quite easily as well, Simon Murray.
Shades of Duke in terms of the way he went down.
Yeah, yes. I think you could argue that.
We've turned him.
However, as previously stated, I do think there was contact on Duke. Murray, I'm not convinced that there was, and he did clearly get the ball. But it's risky because when you're getting the ball from behind a player, you're almost always expecting that to be a foul. In this instance, and the only instance I'll say that in this game, VAR kicked in, done its job well for me.
Now, Ian, let's come to the goal because Jan Danda, he's a guy that catches the eye. I know Craig, not Connor here, but Craig from the Rangers Rabble is a big fan of Jan Danda, and he sort of a lovely assist. It's a ball begging to be heading into the back of the net, and Murray doesn't disappoint.
No, superb header as well, bullet header. Yeah, Danda's always impressed me whenever I've seen him. I mean, admittedly, it's usually against us, but he has impressed me when I've seen him play. He's got some quality. Definitely knows how to make a chance to supply an assist. And like you say, that ball was just begging for someone to do exactly what Simon Murray did and put it in the corner. Simon Murray's a dangerous player. Sometimes I think he's a little bit too overzealous or over exaggerating what he does, and one too many touches here and there, but he has got quality. I'm going to go against Connor again on the penalty. Initially, when I first saw it, I was like, never a penalty, he's took the ball. So that was clear. I didn't need VAR. But it was a superb goal, lovely header. You'd be so happy with that, no matter who you supported, if you put that in the box. And that gets put away like that. Superb.
Connor, following on from that, there's one where I think it's Jordan White who gets sort of laid on a plate to him, just on the penalty. Got to work the goalkeeper, right?
At minimum, I mean, he had half the goal to him freely. And the thing is, he's came into the box, he's called for that pass along to him. It's played absolutely perfectly. At the very least, force the keeper to have to produce what would have been, I think, probably a wonder save actually for that range. But he should have scored that Jordan White. I think he's come in and he's just leaned back on it a wee bit, hasn't he? And he's blazed it into Rose Ed. Fortunately enough for him, I suppose it didn't cost him in the end. But I think if he had that one back, I'm sure he'd have done it differently.
And a bit of a mare of a day, did White, to be fair. It wasn't his best day. It
wasn't, was it, Ian? It wasn't at all. And you say he gets a get out of jail free card with the mess that ensues from this next segment. Okay, then, where do we stand on this? Because, Malky Mackay, I thought, summed it up well in the post-match. Just saying, look, the referee'd already blown by the time Finlay gets his head on it. The rules are there, and it's rightly chalked off. What did you think, Ian, at the time?
At the time, my instant thing was to this offside rule debacle where they played the ball through, players clearly offside, not for this goal, obviously, but players clearly offside. We let the play carry on until it comes to the end of the movement, whether you score or not, then the flag goes up. A rule that I think infuriates pretty much everybody involved in football. So why can't that same rule be applied in this situation? Yeah, it's a penalty because he's grabbed the shirt clear to all to see, but it's not that long before the Killy guy gets his head on it. Nobody stopped because they thought it's a penalty, so he's going to give it, and it's a perfectly good goal. I think Killy have been robbed. I think Killy have been absolutely robbed of a point this weekend.
Connor, is that sentiments you would echo?
Oh, 100%. I cannot... How a team, right, can have a goal chopped off for a foul committed by the opposition team, it's unreal to me. I mean, to me, the referees, and I'm not buying it as well as a split secondaries, there's an advantage rule in football. It's been there for a long time. as long as I can remember, certainly, and probably longer, whereby if a foul is committed on an attacking player, but the ball then falls to another player in that team, or could, the referee will play on the advantage to see if the advantage can be gotten. Obviously, if there's no advantage to play, then he'll pull it back. That is exactly what Kevin Clancy should do there. Because I thought what Derek McInnes said was absolutely spot on. It's no Kevin Clancy's job to decide whether or not Stuart Findlay's getting on the end of that ball. He's no football. You're a referee for a reason, because clearly you were crap at football. So don't try and read a game when you couldn't read it, to save your life. That's not your job. You should let that play on. Then the goal's given, great, one each, and you can boot the Ross County player still after that for the infringement that would have been a penalty had they not scored. That's what should have happened there. And for the life of me, I don't get it. Equally, though, I'd like to know why in those instances, because I get that the whistle was blown, right, but not a single player stopped. It wasn't like the Ross County players all just stood still and he's tapped it in. He's headed it in. The ball was in mid-flight and he's about to head it, so everybody's still attacking it. Can VAR not turn around to Kevin Clancy and go, look, we know you're going to give the penalty there, however, we think that goal should stand because nobody has stopped, so let's, reinstate the goal. Because to me, it's just...
He has genuinely blown the whistle. So before it connects with Finlay's head, I mean, it's up for debate that, because I couldn't tell you conclusively. But if he has blown, then I think that's where the law would come into it. I think the telling sign was when Malky Mackay sort of said, Derek's. If I was Derek, I'd be spitting feathers as well, kind of thing. So I think that tells you all you need to know about that one.
I think that the fact that VAR didn't do that tells you that VAR can't do that, because you've got to think that VAR would pull that back if they can. They'd have to, surely. So that alone tells me that VAR aren't allowed to overrule that, even though it is a very, very clear and obvious mistake.
But listen, Kilmarnock get a chance from 12 yards, and Danny Armstrong, who's quite a talisman for them, steps up, and you're probably thinking he's going to nestle this one away, but Laidlaw gets down and saves it well. And then again, late on thwarts Marley Watkins with a headed chance as well, Ian. So the big goalkeeper, pulled off when it mattered.
Yeah, Laidlaw, I mean, he's done that constantly so far from what I've seen of him this season. He's just pulling off saves. There's been a few, it's not a Rangers pod, granted, but in the last game I saw Ross County was against Rangers, so I can't comment about any other game, but I think the scoreline would have been higher if not for Laidlaw. He has got it in him potentially to be a superb keeper in that respect, and he's, I think, the tallest goalkeeper in the league. Is that right? I think that's one of the stats they pulled out for.
I'll take your word for it, Ian. I'll take your word for it.
So it's not the tallest, one of the tallest anyway. And
we've lost the stat man this week in Lewis. He loves a stat, doesn't he, Connor?
He certainly does.
He's just not a happy boy today after what's happened all over the country, I would say.
Just on going back to Hearts now, you sort of mentioned, Stephen A. Smith maybe being a bit of his depth. Is Malky Mackay a good shout for that one?
Listen, I think so. I think, again, he's slightly blighted because I think some of the bigger clubs still look upon the issues he had with the text messages. And look, of course, it was unacceptable at the time. For me, the guy's paid his penance for that, and that should not be held against him anymore. He's more than proven what kind of manager he is at County. His first season at County, he took them into sixth place. That was unbelievable. Okay, last season they struggled, but what he has done there consistently is he's galvanised a group of players who clearly believe in him. You could see that in the playoff when, and I watched that game and they went 3-0 down in aggregate to Partick Thistle, and for all money you thought Ross County are dead and buried. Unfortunately for us, it's trips to Maryhill next season, and that changed on a dime because they had that never say die attitude, and they managed for somewhere to pull themselves right back in it, and that's what they do. They just keep scrapping, and I think if I were Hearts, why not look at a manager like Malky Mackay and just think, well, what could he do with a bigger budget at a bigger club, with more top quality players at his disposal? He could be a real threat, I think, to most clubs in that division if he had, the opportunity. So if I was on Budge, I would be seriously considering Malcolm Mackay if the trigger was to be pulled on Stephen A. Smith?
I do know, sort of reading between the lines in past interviews, Martindale does spend a lot of time at Tynecastle on his days off in terms of taking in matches and taking in hospitality. So read of that what you will. Okay then, chaps, just a quick run through of the league standings. Obviously, Celtic top of the table with 10 points, closely followed by Motherwell on goal difference. Then you've got the buddies St Mirren in third, Rangers in fourth, closely followed again by Malcolm Mackay's Ross County up into the top six. Dundee in the top six as well. You know, that's a bit of a shock in itself. Livy level on points with them, followed then by Hearts, Kelly, Hibs, and then Aberdeen and St Johnstone joint bottom with 2 points. Barry Robson is, I'd say, under pressure. I don't seem to see it coming from any other outlets other than ourselves, but I would say he's definitely under pressure under this early stage. But a decent opening 4 games for us in terms of the whole complexion of the table, Ian.
Yeah, I think it's been quite good. I think there's been the surprise element from Motherwell. I don't think any of us really saw Motherwell being as they are right now. St Mirren continuing on from a good season from last year. So it's been a good few weeks to take away from our own team, but it's been a good few weeks for the league overall. And the product's actually been quite good for the most part. The games today, just some of the passing moves today, well, we've already said that, were just brilliant. So yeah, good opening 4 weeks of the season. It's been really enjoyable to actually watch these 4 weeks. So yeah, I'm looking forward to. I mean, even for me, I think the international breaks come too soon. I don't like this one. I'd rather we just cracked on, but it is what it is. So I'm looking forward to coming back in a fortnight and going again.
Connor, final word to you, just in terms of how the league's shaping up and maybe the surprise packages and what it's looking like down the bottom.
Yeah, listen, it's always hard to tell into 4 games in because things change quickly in football. But I think you've got to say, for me, taken away from our own team, of course, I actually think the standouts in the first 4 games have been Motherwell. I really do. I think they've totally surprised me with how well they've done. Listen, I'm a North Lanarkshire lad, so I kind of have a soft spot for them in that aspect. But no, I think they've been terrific. St Mirren, of course, as well. The bottom looks interesting because actually, having now seen the 4 games in, I'm not so sure who I'd be picking to go down right now. At the start, I thought Livy, Dundee, hands down. But both do look like they've got a bit of fight there. That you just think, will it be them? So I think with, that the first month has been and gone, I think it's been very good. And I think we've got plenty to look forward to coming back because it's all very, very unpredictable and sort of in the balance now. And, can teams like Motherwell, St Mirren, Livy, can they keep up their form and their performances? Can they keep that consistency? I guess we'll see.
Thanks very much, for joining us. Thanks for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, do like and subscribe. It does help the podcast as well. If you've got any ideas or anything, just leave that in the comments. We'll have a look at those moving forward because the show is in its infancy. Connor, pleasure. Thank you. Ian, pleasure again. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again next time.